When I called my daughter to tell her that her mother had passed, she didn't cry. She said, "Dad, are you sure? Because last time you called me like this, Mom was fine." She was at a spa weekend in Scottsdale with her husband's colleagues. I buried my wife with 4 people in the room. When the estate attorney called me 2 weeks later, I finally understood why Darlene had kept secrets from me for nearly a decade, and why she'd been right to do it. My name is Gary, and I'm 64 years old. I worked 31 years at a transmission plant outside of Terre Haute before they moved the whole operation to Mexico and handed me a severance check and a handshake. Darlene taught 3rd grade at Millbrook Elementary for 27 years. We weren't rich people. We drove practical cars, vacationed in places you could reach by highway, and took pride in the fact that we paid off our mortgage 7 years ahead of schedule. We thought that was enough. Darlene got her diagnosis in February, pancreatic cancer, stage 3. The doctor used a lot of words I had to look up when I got home, but the one I understood immediately was aggressive. We told our daughter that same evening. She was in the middle of dinner at some restaurant in Denver with her husband and another couple, and I could hear the background noise when she answered, clinking glasses, laughter, someone saying something that made the whole table react. "Dad, is this bad?" she asked. "It's serious," I said. "She's going to need treatments. We'd love to have you come home for a while." There was a pause. "Royce has that conference in Austin next month, and we were going to drive up to Vail after. Can she wait until June?" I didn't know what to say to that. Darlene was sitting right next to me on the couch. She could hear every word. She reached over and patted my hand, the way she always did when she wanted me to stay calm. "Sure," I said, "we'll figure it out." She didn't come in June. She came in August for 4 days and spent most of it on her phone for work. Royce didn't come at all. He sent a gift basket with fruit and a card that said, "Thinking of you both." It had a bow on it. The months after that blurred into one long, exhausting stretch of hospital appointments, medication schedules, and nights when I'd lie awake listening to Darlene breathe just to make sure she still was. I cooked every meal. I drove to every appointment. I learned how to manage her IV port without flinching. Our neighbor Connie would bring casseroles twice a week and sit with Darlene while I ran errands. And that small kindness meant more to me than I can put into words. Our daughter called maybe once every 10 days. Darlene always said she was fine when asked. She was not fine. She passed on a Thursday morning in early March, at home, in the bedroom we'd shared for 38 years. I was holding her hand. The last thing she said to me was, "Take care of yourself, Gary, promise me." I promised. I waited a few hours before I made the calls. I needed to sit with her a while. Then I called the funeral home, then Connie next door, then my brother-in-law Dale in Columbus, then my daughter. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Dad, what's up? I need to tell you something." "Hold on 1 second. I heard her say something to someone else, then a door closing. "Okay, what is it?" "Your mother passed this morning." Silence. "Then, Dad, are you sure? Did you call the hospice nurse?" "She's gone, sweetheart. She passed at home peacefully." Another silence. Then quieter. "Dad, I have to be honest with you. Royce and I are in the middle of something really important right now. We've been planning this investment deal for months, and the closing is tomorrow, and I can't process this right now." "I understand," I said, even though I didn't. "I'll call you back tonight, okay? Or tomorrow." She called back the next evening. She said she and Royce would try to come out the following weekend, maybe the one after. She asked about the funeral. I told her I was planning it for that Saturday. She went quiet again and said she wasn't sure that would work with their schedule. It didn't work with their schedule. The service was held at Millbrook Methodist, where Darlene had attended her whole life. The pastor, Reverend Cole, had known her for 20 years and spoke beautifully. There were 11 people in the room. Connie and her husband were there. 3 of Darlene's former teaching colleagues came. 2 women from her Tuesday Bible study, my brother-in-law who drove 4 hours from Ohio without being asked, and me. Our daughter sent flowers. The arrangement was nice, white lilies. There was a small card that said, "With love, Alicia and Royce." I stood at the graveside in the cold and watched them lower Darlene into the ground. And I thought about the 38 years we had built together, the kitchen we renovated twice, the dog we argued about and both ended up loving, the trip to Niagara Falls for our 25th anniversary, where it rained the whole time, and we laughed anyway. I thought about all the mornings she made coffee before I was even awake, and all the nights she waited up when I worked late, and I could not make sense of the fact that none of that mattered enough for our daughter to get on a plane. That evening, I sat alone in our house. Connie had left a pan of lasagna on the porch. I ate half of it standing at the kitchen counter, and then went and sat in Darlene's chair, the one by the window where she liked to grade papers in the evening before she retired, and I let myself cry until there was nothing left. I called my daughter one more time that night. "How did the service go?" she asked. "It was small," I said, "quiet." "Good. I'm sure it was exactly what Mom would have wanted. She would have wanted her daughter there." The line went very quiet. "Dad, that's not fair." "No," I said, "it's not." I hung up. 2 weeks after the funeral, I got a call from an attorney named Harrison Webb, out of Indianapolis. He said he'd been handling Darlene's personal estate matters and needed to schedule a meeting. I almost told him there was some mistake, because Darlene and I had a joint account, a modest retirement fund, and the house, nothing that required a separate attorney. "Mr. Gary," he said carefully, "I think you'll want to come in." I drove to Indianapolis on a Tuesday morning. Harrison Webb's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown. Unremarkable except for the stacks of organized files and the way he watched me with that particular expression lawyers get when they're holding something significant and waiting for the right moment. "How familiar are you with your wife's financial activities over the past decade?" he asked. "Pretty familiar," I said. "We were married 38 years. I thought I knew everything." He nodded slowly. Then he opened a folder. Darlene had, it turned out, inherited a small parcel of land from her uncle in 2014, about 12 acres outside of Greencastle. She hadn't told me because her uncle had been estranged from the family, and she hadn't expected anything. She'd leased the land to a local farmer for grazing, and used that income to open a brokerage account under her name alone. That was the beginning. Over the following 9 years, she had quietly grown that account. She'd educated herself, library books, online courses, weekend afternoons reading about index funds and dividend investing, while I thought she was watching her shows. She'd opened a second account. She'd kept meticulous records in a notebook she stored in the bottom of her sewing box, which I had never once touched in 38 years of marriage. "Your wife was a very methodical person," Harrison said. "She was a third-grade teacher," I said, still trying to catch up. "She graded papers in colored markers. She had a system for everything." The total value of her investment accounts, combined with the life insurance policy she maintained separately, and the current appraised value of the Greencastle parcel, comes to approximately $840,000. I sat very still. "She kept this from me for 9 years, I finally said. "She did," Harrison said. "She left a letter explaining why. But first, there are some other things you should know." He slid another document across the desk. Darlene had drafted a will with specific conditions, the estate transferred to me in full. If I chose to share any portion with our daughter, that was my right. But if our daughter, or her husband, attempted to exert pressure on me regarding the estate, contested the will, or made any legal move toward establishing guardianship or power of attorney over me without legitimate medical cause, the conditions of the will activated immediately. In that scenario, the entire estate moved into an irrevocable charitable trust. They received nothing. "She planned for this," I said. "She did. She also left you a letter." He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Darlene's handwriting, the neat, rounded letters she used for everything important. I opened it there, in his office, while he quietly stepped out to give me privacy. "Gary," it began, "not my love or sweetheart, just Gary, the way she said my name when she meant to be serious. I know you're surprised. I know you're probably a little hurt that I kept this from you. I need you to understand why. I've watched Royce for 6 years now, and I've watched what he's done to our daughter, the way he steered her away from us, the way he talks about money like it's the only real measure of a person. Last Thanksgiving, when they didn't come, I heard the way she made excuses for him, and I knew. He isn't going to change, and the moment he finds out there's money involved, he will come for it. The account numbers are with Harrison. The Greencastle land has a reliable tenant. Don't sell it, the income is steady. And if Royce tries anything at all, you use every condition of that will. You deserve to be comfortable for the rest of your life, Gary. You worked hard and you loved me well, and I want you to travel somewhere warm and eat at good restaurants and stop worrying. I am sorry I won't be there for it. With everything I have, Darlene." I folded the letter very carefully and put it in my shirt pocket. My phone rang on the drive home, my daughter. "Hey, Dad, how are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I said. "Good. Listen, Royce and I have been talking, and we're worried about you being out there in that house by yourself. You're not getting any younger, and with everything that happened with Mom." "I'm 64, I said. I'm not elderly." "No, of course not. I just mean emotionally. Grief does things to people's judgment. We read about it." I thought of Darlene's letter. I thought of the word anything. "Who told you there was an estate to talk about?" I asked. A pause. "What do you mean? There's always paperwork when someone passes." "Our finances were always joint. There wasn't much to sort out. Who told you there was something substantial?" A beat too long. I just assumed. "No, you didn't," I said. She didn't answer. "I'll talk to you later," I said, and ended the call. They drove up from Denver 2 weekends after that. I watched their Range Rover pull into the driveway from the kitchen window. Royce got out first. Tall, pressed shirt, the kind of expensive casual that costs more than most people's work clothes. My daughter followed, wearing sunglasses even though it was overcast. They sat in the car for a while before coming to the door, the way people do when they're reviewing a plan. I opened the door before they knocked. "Dad," my daughter hugged me with both arms, longer than she usually did. It felt studied. "It's good to see you, Gary," Royce said, extending his hand. He'd never called me anything but Gary, never Dad or even Sir, just my name delivered the way a business contact delivers a card. They came inside. I watched their eyes move around the room the way I'd watch someone inventory a store. Royce's gaze stopped on the sideboard where Darlene kept her china, then on the old Seth Thomas clock above the mantel that her grandfather had brought from Tennessee. "The house looks great," my daughter said. "It looks the same as always," I said. We sat in the living room. My daughter talked about the drive, about traffic on I-70. Royce asked if I'd eaten, then produced vacuum-sealed meals from some subscription service he'd packed for the trip. "We were worried you weren't taking care of yourself," my daughter said. "I'm eating fine," I said. "Connie brings food." "The neighbor," Royce said, nodding slowly. "That's sweet. But Gary, you can't rely on neighbors long-term. You need real support, family support." "I agree," I said. "It's a shame family wasn't available earlier." My daughter looked at her hands. Royce leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, the posture of a man who believes he's being direct while being anything but. "Gary, we want to help you navigate everything that comes next. The house, any accounts, making sure you're protected. Losing a spouse is one of the most disorienting things that can happen to a person, and we don't want anyone taking advantage of you during a vulnerable time." "Anyone like who?" I asked. "Well, attorneys, financial advisors, people who see a grieving older man and sense an opportunity." He paused. "I have contacts in estate management, people I trust. It might make sense to have someone in your corner who knows what they're doing." "I already have an attorney," I said. "Right, but who is he? How well do you know him? Did Darlene hire him? Because sometimes these situations, the attorney has interests that don't necessarily align with yours." "He's fine," I said. "Gary." My daughter's voice shifted, softer, worried in a way that sounded genuine but landed hollow. "We just need to know that you're okay, that you're thinking clearly, that you're not going to make any decisions you'll regret." "What decisions are you worried I might make?" She glanced at Royce. He gave a small nod. "There may be more to Mom's estate than you realize," she said. "And if you're not in the right headspace to manage it, how would you know anything about your mother's estate?" She stopped. "I'll ask you once," I said. "Who did you talk to?" Royce cut in smoothly. "Gary, we made a few calls to the county probate office, just to understand the process, to make sure things were handled properly. We weren't snooping, we were looking out for you." There it was. "And what did you find out?" I asked. "That there may be assets that go to probate, that it's more complex than a simple joint account situation." I stood up. "I think it's time for you to go." My daughter looked stricken. "Dad." "Not today. I'm not ready for this conversation today." We drove all the way from Denver. "I know," I said. "I noticed you didn't drive when it mattered." The silence that followed had weight to it. Royce stood first, retrieving his jacket from the arm of the chair, with that careful composure he always maintained. My daughter sat a moment longer, looking at me with something that might have been shame. "We're not trying to hurt you," she said quietly. "Then stop," I said, "and go home." After they left, I sat in Darlene's chair for a long time. Then I called Harrison Webb. "They've been to the probate office," I said. "They're circling." "I know," he said. "I heard from my contact there. They also called 2 other estate attorneys in the county this week. asking about contesting a will on grounds of testamentary incapacity. What does that mean in plain English? They want to argue that Darlene wasn't of sound mind when she wrote the conditions into the will. It's a long shot legally, but it's also a signal. They're preparing something. I thought about the Range Rover in my driveway, the vacuum-sealed meals, the way Royce's eyes had moved across the room like he was pricing things. What did Darlene leave to prepare for this? I asked. She left more than the letter, Harrison said. There's a box. She asked me to hold it until you were ready. I drove back to Indianapolis the following week. Harrison placed a metal fireproof box on the desk and gave me the key. Inside were printed records of phone calls, dates, summaries in Darlene's handwriting, exact quotes she'd written down immediately after hanging up. 2 years of them. My daughter asking about the house, whether we'd considered downsizing. Royce suggesting once that a place like yours would sell well in this market, and offering to connect us with a realtor. My daughter asking, with careful delicacy, whether we had long-term care insurance, and if not, whether we'd thought about what would happen if one of us became incapacitated. There were also printed email threads, Royce corresponding with a financial planner in Denver, not asking for advice for himself, but describing in detail an elderly relative's assets and asking about the fastest legal path to consolidating control. The planner had responded with caution. Royce had not written back. And there was a flash drive. She used a small digital recorder, Harrison said. She kept it in her sweater pocket during certain calls. I listened to 3 of the recordings that evening in his office. Royce's voice was smooth and confident. In one call, he suggested to my daughter that the sooner we get Gary into a managed situation, the better for everyone. In another, he discussed selling the house and putting the proceeds somewhere we can actually see them working. He never raised his voice. He never said anything overtly illegal. But the picture across all of it was clear as window glass. Then Harrison told me something else. He'd done some research on Royce at the request of a colleague whose client had once done business with him in Chicago. Royce had been involved in a guardianship dispute over a wealthy aunt, his former business partner's mother, where he'd served as the primary advocate for establishing legal control over her finances. The woman had eventually died in a memory care facility outside of Naperville, and a significant portion of her estate had transferred to an LLC in which Royce had a silent interest. No charges had been filed. The family had been too exhausted and too fractured to pursue it. He's done this before, I said. It appears so, Harrison said. Does my daughter know? I don't think she does, he said. But Gary, not knowing isn't the same as being innocent of it. They came back 3 weeks later. This time with a woman Royce introduced as a family advocate, which turned out to mean a social worker he'd hired privately. She had a clipboard and a practiced manner, and she asked me questions in that particular tone people use when they've already decided the answer. I answered every question clearly and calmly. I offered them coffee. I walked the social worker through the house and showed her my medications, correctly organized in their weekly tray, the grocery list on the refrigerator, the utility bills filed in the folder by the phone, the calendar where I tracked my appointments in ink. Through it all, Royce watched me the way a chess player watches the board. When the social worker stepped outside to make notes, I looked at my daughter. Is this what you want? I asked her. Not Royce, her. Is this genuinely what you want? She had the decency to look away. I picked up my phone and called Harrison. They're here, I said. All 3 of them. Are you ready? He said. Yes. 10 minutes later, Harrison arrived with 2 other men, a detective from the Indiana State Police Fraud Unit named Greer, and the attorney who represented Darlene's estate. I opened the front door wide when I heard the cars. Royce's composure held for about 30 seconds after he understood what was happening. Then something shifted behind his eyes. A calculation, a reassessment, and he produced a smile, the kind men like him keep in reserve for exactly this kind of moment. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said. Mr. Royce, Detective Greer said evenly, we're here regarding an ongoing investigation into elder financial abuse and fraudulent guardianship proceedings. I haven't filed any proceedings. You contacted 2 attorneys about contesting a will on mental incapacity grounds within 3 weeks of the testator's death. You corresponded with a financial planner regarding consolidating control over assets belonging to a living individual without that individual's knowledge or consent. And you have a prior association with a guardianship case in Cook County, Illinois, that is being reviewed in connection with this investigation. Harrison laid the documentation across the dining room table, one item at a time. The call summaries in Darlene's careful handwriting, the email threads, the recordings. My daughter stood very still by the window. Royce leaned toward his attorney, the one he'd brought along, who had been quietly gathering papers, and said something in a low voice. His attorney nodded and said they would need to speak privately. "Alicia," I said. She turned and looked at me. "Your mother knew," I said. "She documented everything, not because she hated him or even because she hated you, because she loved you enough to leave you a way out." Something moved across her face. I watched it happen in real time, the shift from managed composure to something cracking underneath it. "The things he said about you," she started. She stopped. "He told me you and Mom didn't understand money, that you were going to lose everything, that we needed to step in while we still could. And you believed him." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "I need you to understand something," I said. "Your mother didn't leave those recordings to punish you. She left them so that when this happened, and she knew it would happen, you'd have something concrete to stand on, something to see clearly, because she knew that without evidence, you'd spend the rest of your life wondering if you'd made the wrong choice." Royce was escorted from the house by Detective Greer for formal questioning. His attorney followed, briefcase in hand. The social worker had slipped out quietly some time earlier without a word. My daughter sat down on the couch where she used to sleep during summer vacations as a teenager, where she used to sprawl watching television in pajamas on Saturday mornings, and she covered her face with her hands. I sat down beside her, not close enough to crowd her, just there. We didn't talk for a while. Outside, the cars in my driveway started their engines and pulled away one by one until it was quiet again. Then she said, "I didn't come to her funeral, Dad." "No," said. "I don't know how to fix that." "You can't fix it," I said. "That's just something you'll have to carry. But you can decide what comes next." She didn't say anything for a long time. "Your mother forgave you before any of this happened," I said. "That's the kind of person she was. But forgiveness from her is one thing. The rest of it, you have to earn that." Royce was charged 6 months later with elder financial abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud, charges that connected not only to what he'd attempted with me, but also to the guardianship case in Illinois, which state investigators reopened after Harrison's colleague shared the documentation. He took a plea deal rather than go to trial. He would not be involved in any financial management or fiduciary role for a very long time. My daughter filed for divorce while he was still negotiating the terms. She called me the night she signed the papers, and she didn't say much, but I could hear in her voice that something had released inside her that had been held too tight for years. She moved back to Indiana in the fall. Not with me. She got a 2-bedroom apartment in town, found a job at a nonprofit she actually believed in, and started showing up on Sunday afternoons without calling ahead, the way she used to when she was in college. We didn't rush anything. We ate lunch at the diner on Main Street, where Darlene used to take her every year on her birthday. We talked about small things first. We worked our way up. I still live in our house, mine and Darlene's, surrounded by everything she touched for 38 years. Her sewing box is on the shelf in the guest room now, the notebook still inside it. I don't need to read it anymore. I know what it says. What surprises me looking back is not the money. I still forget sometimes that it exists, which I think would please her. And it's not even Darlene's cleverness, though she was without question the sharpest person I've ever known. What surprises me is that she saw all of it coming, years before I did, and her first instinct was not to protect the estate or protect herself. Her first instinct was to protect me. And then even in all of that, to leave our daughter away home. Some people love loudly. Darlene loved the way a 3rd-grade teacher grades papers, methodically, completely, with colored markers and a system for everything, making sure every last thing was in order before she turned off the light. I keep the promise I made her. I take care of myself.